Well, let's discuss all of this further with Seb Kennedy. He's the founding editor of Energy Flux News, an independent gas and LNG analytics platform. Joins us from San Jose. And in Doha, Abdullah Bandar Al-Ataibi. He's an assistant professor in international affairs at Qatar University. Good to have you with us. Let me start with Abdullah, if I may. So one of the warnings we got out of the GCC today was concerning disruption of food for the world. Maybe one of the aspects that hasn't been widely telegraphed is the fact that 30% of the world's fertilizer goes through the Straits of Hormuz, right? So we're talking about a potential disruption in agriculture right across the globe for countries that rely on, they need that fertilizer now.
For sure, Sami. It's actually a big problem. For years, there has been a focus on the GCC as being the major energy powerhouse in the world. But recently, with this war, it's actually different now. I think that the Gulf is feeding the world indirectly, and you can see that with the fertilizers. I mean, according to Bloomberg and their recent report, they just listed some of the numbers, and the numbers are just like great and just like mind-blowing, to be honest. If you look at countries like Turkey, and they receiving almost 80% of their fertilizers from the GCC. You talk about the US, and they're receiving lots of them, $5 billion from the GCC, 51% from Qatar here. And this is big numbers. And we talk about numbers that we will feel the impact of this war in the next few months. It's not now, because what we are consuming at the moment is basically things were planted like a few months ago, but in the next few months, we will feel that while we're dining, basically. We're going to feel the prices, we're going to feel the shortages in some of them, because even farmers in the US, farmers in Australia, for example, and they are two of the big countries in the world. So Strait of Hormuz is a major thing for trade, and also energy and those products that the GCC and the fertilizers they are producing. They are actually a big concern for the world, and this makes the whole thing is global.
Very dangerous for the world. Seb, we've just had this posting by Donald Trump on Truth Social talking about delaying the threat to attack Iran's power plants by 10 days until April the 6th. Just take us through what that would mean, not just for the region, right? Because we know Iran has also said it will in kind attack power plants in the Gulf. It may take further action on the Strait of Hormuz. What will that mean for the world if we have that kind of scenario of we're talking about the destruction of energy in the Middle East, basically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most immediate concern is a humanitarian one, because destruction at that scale on that infrastructure that is so critical for civilians, you're going to see potential lack of water. You know, the vast majority of the population of the Gulf region rely on desalination plants for their drinking water. Iran said they would attack those. If they get blown up, then you have hundreds of millions of people without fresh water. So where do they go? You're going to see an immigration crisis as people flock en masse out of the region in search of the most basic human necessity, which is drinking water. And electricity, if they take out electricity plants, then obviously all modern convenience, all modern way of life stops. And as the warmer months approach, that means no air conditioning, so intolerable heat. If this was to go on for weeks or months, it really is the worst case scenario, and it's good that there's been another delay to this deadline. But I think we just need to get beyond that. We need to get to a place where all sides acknowledge that further strikes on critical civilian energy infrastructure do not benefit anybody. They are not an acceptable amount. There is no amount of acceptable collateral damage when you're talking about the destruction of things that people rely on to live and breathe.
Abdullah, that would be not just a problem for the GCC, right? If we talk about the destruction of the energy infrastructure across this part of the Middle East, that's going to be a global issue, right? That's one assumes that you're not going to have the processing capacity for anything related to gas or oil. What is that going to do to the price of oil? What is it going to do to people at the petrol pump in the Philippines or in Nigeria?
They're going to feel the impact, that's for sure, Sami. When you talk about countries like Qatar and Kuwait, they had to actually rely on the force majeure to actually save themselves from illegal consequences. And with the disruption of energy in the region, we talk about, for example, the Ras Laffan attack in Qatar, that's, according to Qatar Energy, is going to cost the country's $20 billion annually. And this is for 5 years to fix the damage. So we talk about...
Abdullah, do we expect the price to go up even higher on oil and gas?
I think so, but hold a second. Like, if you asked me this question like 30 minutes ago, I would say yes for sure. But now we have a pause on the destruction of energy infrastructure in Iran. So I think prices will react to this. They will go down, I think, in the next few days. That's for sure. I think President Trump is playing that game with the markets. He just keep pushing them up and down. And I think for the next few days, yes, they will go down. And based on the talks between Iran and the US, I think the market will react. So they may go up as well to 150. According to reports, they said within 2 months, we could see the 200. And this is a possibility, actually. But now with that pause, I think we're going below the 100.
Seb, there's also a concern about disruption in another vital part of this region, the Strait of Aden, the Red Sea. What would that mean for the global economy?
Any additional choke point being held hostage and disrupting supply chains is simply bad news upon more bad news. And I think we need to differentiate between the possibility of more closures, more disruption to supply chains, and destruction of Gulf infrastructure from the baseline, which is a continuation of the simple closure of Hormuz. And every single day that this goes on, even without the closure of transits along the Red Sea, even if Iran doesn't start blowing up the whole of the energy infrastructure in the Gulf region, you are still talking about a wholly unprecedented energy crisis that is only just beginning to ripple out from South Asia, across Southeast Asia, and across industrialized economies the world over. So even if we avoid the worst case scenario, we're still heading for an energy crisis, the likes of which the world has never seen before. So you heap on top of that the closure of the Red Sea, and you've got more constraints. It's just going to be a compounding factor on a ballooning crisis, which energy markets are absolutely failing to price adequately. And the big problem when markets don't price risk adequately is that you don't get the right demand response. And I'm very sorry to say this, but there needs to be more demand destruction. There needs to be more pain. Otherwise, we will see physical shortages of critical fuels across the world. We're already seeing panic buying and strategic reserves running out in Australia, New Zealand, state of emergency in the Philippines, rationing, export controls across all of South Asia. And that's before we have all these worst case scenarios that everybody likes to talk about, because we've already got the worst case scenario going on right now.
Seb, if I could jump in,
it's already happening.
Let me ask Abdullah, what does sudden destruction, demand destruction mean? Are we going for the world? Are we going to see factories start to close around the world because there isn't enough supply? Are we going to see joblessness rise? Are we looking at something along the lines of what we saw in COVID? The sort of sudden shock of economic, I don't want to say collapse, but economic shock.
Unfortunately, Sami, this is possible. Let's be honest. Now we talk about, for example, the LNG. We talk about Qatar is not producing anymore. So with 20% of this is gone. So can the global economy grow without the 20%? That's a question. Another question is the Financial Times recently said we are within 10 days actually, and then the last LNG shipment will be delivered. Then that means we're going to have a problem with 20%, like serious problem. Like what the market has been dealing with the past few weeks, it was actually the shock. But now we're going to talk about the impact, and this impact will be with us for months, or could be more than months.
Right.
We could see actually a recession. We could see jobs, people losing their
Right.
jobs, and this is a possibility. And we talk about like this is going to hit the global economy very hard. And I'm just worried about the developing countries, because these are the countries actually they
Going
have
to pay
no
the biggest
plan B, and they
price
are the
and
countries who are going to suffer.
feel most of the pain.
Most
All
of
right,
them,
let's
yeah.
thank our guests, Seb Kennedy, the founding editor of Energy Flux News, and Abdullah Bandar Al-Ataibi, assistant professor of international affairs at Qatar University.